Welcome to the Matchbook Betting Podcast. I'm Jesse May. Welcome to the Matchbook Betting Podcast. I'm Jesse May, and I hope that wherever you are, you're staying safe and staying at home. Today, we're talking poker betting, and specifically the Irish Open, which this year, for the first time, is being played online at Party Poker. Joining me, two gentlemen who both qualify as my poker heroes, although historically, I found it best to stay 6 feet away from you guys at all times.
You're probably right.
Yeah, it's been sensible for my wallet. First of all, the man who's been called the People's Champion of Irish Poker. I don't think he's ever missed an Irish Open. My good friend Padraig Parkinson. Hi, Padraig.
Hiya, Jesse. It must be a pleasure to be here with you two legends. And, well, at the moment, anyway, I'll give you an update on that later on.
Yeah, and also joining us, someone who we've both known a long time, Padraig. He embodies, I think, like the history of poker. The original consultant for Party Poker was launched 20 years ago, and throughout that time, the mastermind behind the first Party Poker Million, and then, of course, the face and lead commentator for all the formative years, the WPT. Also, if that's not enough, you've got a WSOP bracelet, a WSOP Champions of Champion bracelet, and a WPT bracelet. Welcome, Mike Sexton.
Hey, Jesse, good to be here. Padraig, always good to see you as well. And I'm looking forward to this. Should be a lot of fun.
So, look, Mike, I mean, there may be a lot of people out there who are familiar with poker, but not really poker betting. But, I mean, they kind of go hand in hand, don't they?
Well, it goes hand in hand all the time. Guys are always making bets at the poker table.
Can you? Yeah.
I really think that the element of betting on poker tournaments like the Irish Open is a fantastic thing because it draws in people that don't even play the event where they can have action on it and sweat the tournament. And it really makes it a lot of fun, really does.
And I mean, this year, you know, the special thing about the Irish Open being online at Party Poker, they're actually using real names instead of, the online screen aliases. So it is easier for a fan to actually know who's playing.
I'm a huge fan of that. I can tell you that. So you know who you're playing against, and you can also follow the betting, obviously, much easier that way.
What about you, Parg? You think it's a good idea to use real names here? I mean, you're gonna, know who actually knocks you out for starters.
Oh, yeah, well, the real names online is fantastic, but I just hope they don't bring it into live poker. I mean, then you have to watch what you say.
You've been used to playing under that.
I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. And everybody, all the players I've been talking to, and everybody's talking these days. I've never spoken to so many poker players in 30 years. I mean, guys that I didn't know had my phone number and I'm phoning up. And you ask them, what do you want? It's just they need to talk about something, but they're all saying the same thing, that they're loving the real names.
So look, Mike, what do you think was like the first event that was bet on widely as far as poker goes? Am I right in saying it might have been the World Series of Poker that Stu Unger won in 1980?
Yeah, back in the early days of the World Series of Poker, actually Jack Benyon and Jackie Gaughan, who had a casino down the street, they booked the event together, and they put prices out for all the players. And in fact, word has it that Stewie won more betting on himself the first year than he won in the prize pool. So they started him out at 80-1 because he'd never played before.
He won the first time he played, right?
Yeah, he won the first 2 times he played.
Yeah, and
he put a dent in those guys' wallet, and I think they tend to give it up after that. And they actually gave it up after. The guy from the Hustler Casino bet $20,000 on himself to win $2 million one year, and in the first level at $25.50, he got up like $40,000. Now back then, you started with $10,000 in chips. Now, of course, they were worried that maybe he gave guys $20,000 to dump the chips off to him or something. They didn't know what was going on.
No, I don't believe that. I thought it was 30,000.
But so anyway, they were a little concerned if he did that at the first table, what would happen at the last table if he'd buy them all out. But in any case, Jack Benyon sent Gary Lundgren, who was a he might have staked Gary. Gary was very low with Jack at the table to sort of keep an eye on Larry Flint, and it worked out well for him because he didn't win the tournament. But after that, as you know, a couple years later, Terry Rogers and the Irish Gang came over, and then Terry literally set up a book every year, and it was so much fun. He put prices on everybody every day. He had new prices. It added so much more fun to the event. It was unbelievable, and I just loved it. Naturally, I was a good customer of his, but didn't fare so well. But still, it was great.
Yeah, and it's an interesting connection because he is also the guy who started the Irish Open. He was a bookmaker, and Parg. I mean, the story I heard from Liam Flood is that the first year he came over, it was a Skinner for the book. He wiped everybody out. Did you hear that?
Terry, I can't remember. I know they all got arrested in Binions. I mean, Terry and Flood and Seamus Power. But Terry talked himself out of there in half an hour. They probably just didn't want to listen to any more of him shouting. And he came back a few hours later and they got Flood out. But Seamus Power didn't get out for a day or two. And I don't think he's left Ireland ever since.
That was a couple of years after he started booking, though, at the World Series of Poker. And he'd actually set up a table in the event. I think it was like 1991 or so. And Metro actually came in and just took them all out in handcuffs and because they didn't have gaming licenses, et cetera. and they wouldn't let him book there. And as Padraig said, he never came back to Las Vegas again.
That was just a technicality, surely.
So,
imagine getting arrested for gambling in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's just not fair. It's just not fair. But I think the Irish Open is the oldest event running poker tournament besides the World Series. And Parg, in the early years, if you won the Irish Open, part of it was a seat to the main event, wasn't it? Because wasn't Colette Doherty? She was the first Irish Open winner, and then she also played.
Colette was the two-time winner of the Irish Open, but she won the first one ever in the Eccentrics Club. And, you know, Terry being the big showman, like nobody could go home because Terry had to get on the phone and phone up Benny Binion or Jack, one of them, whoever was up at the time. And Terry, you know, Terry used to shout at the best of times. He didn't know how to speak at a normal voice because he was an on-track bookmaker and he made sure everybody heard what he had to say. But he phoned up and he said, a woman has won the Irish Open and we are giving her $10,000 to go and play the World Series of Poker and we want her name up on the board now. And that was it. I mean, Colette didn't know nothing about this $10,000 until Terry told her afterwards it was coming out of her prize money. But that was Terry. But they've got a great picture over there in the cowboy hat from 81 or whatever it was. It's brilliant. Like.
I mean, there's been some pretty great Irish Open winners, great characters. Obviously, Noel Furlong's a two-time winner.
A couple of dodgy ones too.
But my favorite is and I know just because most people probably don't know him, but Parg, you certainly do. Is Jimmy Langan is a two-time Irish Open winner, and didn't he make waves against Doyle Brunson at the WSOP as well?
Yeah, well, Jimmy was a great player, and he was one of maybe Jimmy, Don Fagan, maybe Colette Doherty's son Peter. They had got on to a bit like Surinder Sunar in England. They had figured out how to play tournaments. I mean, a few years before the rest of us, I mean, even got to first base. And Jimmy was over in Vegas with, I think, Jimmy and Johnny Suitcase and Terry and, oh God, a whole load of those guys. And Jimmy was kind of prone to, you know, going on highs and lows and all of that, especially when he forgot to take the tablets. But I think he played, there's the old guys in Ireland. Now, I'm not even old enough to remember this, but the guys have told me that Jimmy was sitting there, you know, maybe day 2 of the World Series, and he's bluffing Doyle Brunson, and he's put all the chips into the pot in the sign of a cross. And Brunson is just looking at this. I mean, this is some kind of voodoo shit, but I think Brunson only called him just to see what it meant. but actually, what it did mean was Jimmy was bluffing. So that was the end of that. But he called some great waves. I think Jimmy bought, I think it must have been Sam Angel that sold Jimmy a whole load of crap that passed for jewelry. And Jimmy was sitting there at the table and he's high as a kite. I mean, not high from any substance he'd taken, but from the substances he wasn't taking. But he's sitting at the table and he's got a big crowd around, and he's thrown all the jewelry at the spectators. And some guy apparently said to Jimmy, Will you buy me a car if you win, Jimmy? And I want to buy you the biggest pink Cadillac I can find. Mike probably remembers that.
I don't actually. No.
That's probably because he did win, so we don't know if he was going to buy a Cadillac or not.
But I mean, Mike, through the years, obviously, when the WSOP came around, there was always prop betting. I guess last longer, outrights, and that. I don't remember the details, but I remember you always used to tell the story about when Tuna Lund, he didn't win the main event, but I think you might have been betting on him.
Oh, you had to bring that up. Yeah, Terry Rogers.
No, I was going to bring it up if he didn't, so don't blame him.
This was in 1990, main event of the World Series, and Terry Rogers had a table set up, and he was taking bets, and he made new lines at the end of each day. So at the end of day one, Tuna Lund was in second chip position with about, I don't know how many chips, but he's in second chip position, and there are about 60 players left. And I go up to Terry, and I said, "What's the price on Tuna Lund to win?" He said, "Oh, Mike, you're a good customer." He said, "I'll give you 17-1. And I thought 17-1, I thought it was the biggest steal. Tuna Lund to me was like one of the top 3 no-limit hold'em players in the world.
I
thought for sure he'd get to the final table, and I'm getting 17-1 on him. I reached in my pocket. I had $2,006. I bet $2,000 on Tuna to win at 17-1. I saved the $6 for the cheeseburger bar. And
in case you get hungry, yeah.
So now Tuna gets the final table, and now he gets heads up against Mansour Matloubi. So he's heads up. I'm going to win $36,000, which is like $10 million back then to me, if Tuna wins this tournament. And Tuna's got the chip lead. And now a hand comes up where Tuna raises and Mansour re-raises, and the flop comes 9-4 deuce. Mansour leads out and bets. Tuna raises, Mansour moves in, and Tuna goes into a long stall and finally calls and turns up ace-9. Mansour had 2 10s. And the crowd's moaning, and the crowd is packed, and the whole crowd is rooting for Tuna. Nobody harder than me, of course. And now the turn card comes off, and it's an ace. Tuna takes the lead with aces and 9s on the turn. I'm thinking, oh, my God, look at this.
95% or more.
I'm going to win this. And now a little guy named Tab that I played a lot of golf with, and he played 2 and 400 stud, 2 and 400 hold'em, was standing right next to me. And for some reason, because I'm broke, that was the reason, I said to Tab, I said, I want to bet a 10 comes off, and I'm going to take 15-1 for $200. And he knows it's 22-1, and he's going to say, 15-1, 200, you got it. And then all of a sudden a huge roar lets out, because a 10 spikes on the river, and Mansour makes 3 10s to win the pot. And Tab said, "What happened?" I said, "You lost 3,000. That's what happened." And cost me 36,000. And Mansour went on to win, of course. And that was just it's probably the greatest outdraw on the river in the history of the World Series of Poker for sure. And I believe losing that 36,000 was much more painful to me than Tuna losing the main event. That's for sure.
he never. A lot of people kind of.
Well, you could have lost the $6 as well.
Hey, 2 years later, Tuna finished third in the main event. I mean, the guy was phenomenal.
But they underestimated him too, because he always used to wear overalls, didn't he? And had a toothpick. He kind of looked like a country boy, but he was a heck of a player, I think.
He looked like the brokest guy in the room, Tuna Lund. He won the very first Super Bowl of poker that Amarillo Slim put together up in Reno, and they had all the cameras and all the film crews from NBC, for networks and all these things. And Tuna looked like a complete slob, dressed and every day Slim was trying to get him clothes to change and look decent. And he never did it. And they never did air the show because of the way Tuna was dressed. And he just looked like he didn't have 2 cents. And he was richer than probably 90% of the poker world putting all their bankrolls together. That's how much money he had.
I think he ran the early slot teams, didn't he? I mean, that was his.
He ran slot teams. He had so much money. I actually said to him one time, Tuna, I tried to give him $1,000. I said, I'm going to give you $1,000 if you give me written permission that just in case you die before I do, that I have permission to go in your backyard and start digging up for a while. You know, because I know he had all his money buried in buckets and stuff in the backyard, and I knew that, and but he had a huge yard up in Reno, but he didn't do it.
What are we waiting for?
So look, I mean, I think as far as poker betting goes, you know, for me, poker is a lot like golf. You know, if you want to bet the outrights, it's quite a big market, but the matchups are quite a good thing to bet on, and that's what you know, really probably that's where a lot of the action is. That's what we've got up on Matchbook. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, my memory is that the first time that a major sports book actually put up poker matchups was one of the first WPT championships in Las Vegas. I think when Martin Jeckniff won it, the Pinnacle Sportsbook put up a whole bunch of last longers, and it was a tremendous success.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But when you're betting on poker, like last longers, it's much different than if you're betting on somebody to win. For example, you could take any tight player and be the favorite if you're betting against guys like Gus Hansen, Michael the Grinder Mizrachi, Stu Unger, these kind of guys that just play very, very fast to try to accumulate chips, including a lot of today's players. But if you're betting on to win, you're obviously going to bet on all those guys ahead of the tight player because it's just two different betting concepts. And so when you go to the betting window, this is a last longer betting concept. So you may take a little different approach, not necessarily because you think one guy's the better player, but because you think the other guy's tight and he's just going to hang on and not go out.
Right. Well, this is a rebuy event. I don't know if that affects things because Party Poker's doing it. There's actually 4 day ones. And so the way we're working these matchup markets, and I think it is the best for rebuy tournaments, is you have to make the second day, which is when the field is combined, in order to win the bet. Because there's really no way to tell who's come first or last. And actually, that was one of the problems Pinnacle had. They didn't realize that in the WPT Championship, you know, guys were going out on day one and nobody knew where they'd finished. But so there will be
surely they believe you.
There was a lot of claims, believe me.
Yeah, it's actually the best way to do it by far because it's easy to keep track. And now, especially online, they obviously know everybody goes out because you see it listed there. So it's going to work out very well. And to tell you the truth, I highly recommend everybody, whether you're playing the event or whether you're just sweating the event, where you can watch it on all the venues that it's going to be telecast on, and it's going to be so much Twitch, fun to bet and have a little sweat bet. I think it's a great idea.
And with what's going on right now with no sports, I don't know. Could there be a future right now with Party Poker running more online events using real names, and they could all be great betting events?
Yeah, it can work, and betting is great in poker if you bet up to a certain amount. You couldn't let a guy bet $1 million. The first prize was $50,000, for example, because you never know what's going to happen there. He might do a little business or something, But as long as it's a reasonable amount where no hanky-panky is ever going to go on because it's not going to affect the outcome of the event, I think it's fantastic.
Totally agree. I mean, head-up matchups, the big head-up matchups, the big online events. Now, I know Party Poker's doing something after this Irish Open. They're having what the Poker Masters, which usually takes place in Las Vegas. All those events are $10,000, $25,000, and $50,000 buy-in events. I mean, that's the kind of size where you can have confidence in the markets, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, and you got to have confidence in the on-sign side as well, and all the players that are playing in the tournament. And these guys that play in the Poker Masters, where you're playing 50,000 buy-ins and 25,000 buy-ins, they play with each other all the time. they're going to use their regular name just like they'd be at a live event. And I think it's just fantastic that Party Poker has partnered with the Irish Open, for example, a live event, the Poker Masters, for example, a live event. And then after that in May, they're doing a huge event partnering with the World Poker Tour for the first ever WPT Online Championship. So it's just a great opportunity for players to play in massive events that are just like live events. Just the only difference is you don't have to travel and pay hotel expenses, and you get the same big prize pools and the same guarantees.
So hopefully they'll be using real names for those. I don't know. I don't think they are for the Poker Masters, but for the WPT, that would be great. And then you have your usual WPT stars, and you get to follow them. So look, we've got a couple of betting of matchups up on Matchbook. We've got 7 last longers now. We can just look at 1 or 2 of them and see if you guys have an opinion, if there's any value. And then after day 2, so this starts Wednesday, April 8th is the first day 1, and then there'll be day 2 finishes on Saturday, and then day 3, the final day, starts Sunday. So we're going to get some events up after day 2 when we kind of know. I guess they'll be down to 30, 40 players or so. But now you guys know a couple of these guys. I mean, Parg, you do, because would you say that there's going to be a large contingent of Irish players playing this Irish Open online?
Yeah, because there's absolutely nothing else to do. The pubs are closed, so we're very limited in what we can do in Ireland now. Racetracks are closed, the pubs are closed. God, online poker, it seems like it was a present from heaven.
It's a perfect storm.
When we started talking about the matchups, so now when you said we, that does not include me. But when you said what matchup would you like to see, and I said Andy Black and Dara O'Kearney, because I think Mike would agree that this is the old against well, almost old, but it's the two different approaches to poker. Is that Andy would be the flair player and very much a field guy and could blow up at any minute, but he could do something brilliant. Dara is ultimate internet pro who's got it all worked out. Jesus, we were doing a commentary with Dara a couple of weeks ago in Madrid, Jesse, if you remember, and you asked Dara what he could do. And Dara said, well, the 2s is a pass, but you can call with the 3s. I nearly fell off the chair. But I mean,
Mike,
I mean, it is the
Mike, what are your first?
It is the classical matchup. And you did point it out earlier that there's rebuys in this. So, I mean, if this was a live event, I'd go for Andy, because he's got, I mean, I know Dara's played a lot of live stuff recently, and he's played some high rollers, so he's getting a lot more experience. But Andy's been doing it for 35 years. So if it was live, I'd pick Andy. But online, maybe Dara, because Dara is, a top online pro. But what you have to take into account with the betting is that I know Andy will keep buying in until he runs out of money, and he ain't going to run out of money because he's been going pretty good. There's many buys. I mean, and Andy actually would go into these things with a strategy. And it might be a 5 or 6 buy-in strategy, but it's not about, whether I'll rebuy if I have to. Andy would be playing marginal and gambling situations to try and get the chips. This is kind of a very, Mike was saying earlier, in that some guys are prepared to gamble because they're trying to win. And some guys would be playing a more mathematical game because they're not trying not to rebuy if they don't have to. So it's, I mean, this is one where you'd go for Andy live. And,
well, Jesse, what's the price? What's the price on the
internet?
So it's pretty tight. Dara's a slight favorite. He's minus 115. Andy Black's minus 110. Now, this is an exchange, so we're expecting that those margins to tighten. People can come in and post whatever price they want. I mean, Mike, you've known Andy for a long time. What are your thoughts on how he plays? You probably remember when he was quite deep the year Stu Unger won for the 3rd time in '97.
I do.
I'm not going to forget that in a hurry.
I'll tell you the truth. The year I won the Tournament of Champions in 2006, Andy Black was the chip leader going into the final table, and he spewed all his money off with 7 players left playing against Daniel Negreanu. They got in 6 raises for the flop, and he had ace king, and Daniel had 2 kings, and it knocked Andy down and probably won me the $1 million, to tell you the truth, getting rid of Andy because he was just
definitely won you the
dominating
$1 million. I was sitting there watching it.
Yeah, and he had a blow up, and he just went crazy with his ace king, and against the guy who's not going to put in 5 bets and 6 raises, unless he's got the aces or kings. And Andy woke up to it a little bit too late.
So I mean, that is Andy Black in a nutshell, because
he's done it a number of times,
right.
Where he's, I think, in fact, he did the same thing when Stewie won the main event, as you said, and then I think he went off to become a monk for a few years, and to talk to himself for about 4 or 5 years before he came back.
I mean, that is actually a true story. I mean, he was second chip leader with I think 15 left. Yeah.
But I love Andy Black. And,
it is, but Andy has come along quite a bit from that. I mean, Andy's in good form of late. He's won several events in the last 12 months. I mean, they weren't huge, but they were, pretty decent, by Irish standards. So,
well, one thing about Andy, he's not afraid to move his chips, as we know. He's tough to play against because he puts a lot of pressure on you all the time.
So how would you price that up? I don't know how well you know Darragh O'Kearney, but he is an online superstar.
Yeah, I think the betting line is right, but I think most players were going to bet on Darragh online.
Well, especially because I did check this out with the guys, and I asked Darragh, did he intend rebuying? And Darragh said that himself and Mr. Lapham, that they have a lot of what he called young coins, which is a kind of a combination of Rob Young and Bitcoins, but I think he meant party poker live dollars.
My guess is going to be this.
To be rebuying.
My guess is that everybody they put a price up on is going to rebuy as many times they need to stay in to try to get to day 2.
Yeah. I also
remember the days when you couldn't rebuy when you didn't have the money, Mike.
Well, I know you got to borrow in advance nowadays. That's all.
All right. The next matchup I wanted to mention, because I know you guys both know them quite well, is Rob Young and Jake Cody. Now, Park, how would you describe this matchup?
I want to stay out of that one, if that's okay. Well, I mean, it's I don't know how much needle there was between these two guys when there was that incident in Dusk Till Dawn. Like it may have been exaggerated, and
I think so. It was a bit of fun, but there was some needle for people who don't know the story. Jake Cody won a tournament at Dusk Till Dawn, a big tournament. I think it was £50,000 to the winner, and he immediately decided he was going to take all the money over to the roulette table. Now, Rob Young owns the casino and put the whole thing on black or red. I can't remember which it was. And he won. He doubled up.
So I bet Rob can remember what color it was.
What Rob did have at least 1-0. So,
Hey, I'm sure that didn't bother Rob. It created a lot of fun and action at the casino there. But in this matchup, Rob is my boss, so I can't say too much bad about him. But the truth is, he's probably going to be on the phone multitasking, doing about 8 or 10 different things like he's always doing. And how much a 1,000-pound tournament is going to mean to him, I'm not so sure. But he'll support it, and he's going to play, but he's going to play fast, and he can get some chips. He'll probably be gone.
I mean, Rob has been playing a lot of. Yeah.
I'm guessing what's the price on that match? Surely.
So we've got Jake Cody minus 138 and Rob Young plus 120.
Yeah, I predict that line will go up.
I mean, Jake Cody, of course. I think was he the very first player to win a Triple Crown? Now this is going back almost 10 years or more. But when Jake was firing, and I haven't seen his live results lately, he was top of the tree as far as UK poker goes.
Yeah, I think you got to make him the favorite just because you don't know how much Rob is going to be really interested. He's going to support the event and play it, but who knows how serious he'll be.
Yeah, but I mean, that said, Mike, Rob has been playing a lot of the very high buy-in tournaments around the world lately. The $1 million events, the high rollers. Certainly his game has sharpened for playing against all the superstars.
Yeah, but let me tell you something. If you're playing games where you win or lose $1 million in a cash game every day, and you drop down to play a 1,000-pound tournament, I'm not sure your interest is going to be the same.
So I think I'm hearing you say, Parg, what do you think? Maybe a bet for what minus 140 even on Jake Cody.
Well, these guys are very, very competitive. Like, I agree with Mike. I mean, Rob is liable to be doing 6, 8, 10 things at the same time as he's doing it. But because, I mean, I'm not saying this is a needle match. It probably isn't. But it'll be seen to be a little bit of a needle match. And the bragging rights from this might make it Rob concentrate a bit more than he usually would.
That's true.
So a couple of our other matchups we have up, and I mean, some people know these names, some people don't, but they involve a lot of what's called the Party Poker Online pros. Now, a lot of these matchups have a Party Poker Online pro against someone who would be maybe more known for their live play, Mike. So now, in terms of that, I don't know how many of these names you know, but these guys that are the online pros, they play online tournaments every day. They stream them on Twitch, and they're strong players. Jamie Staples, for instance.
Yeah, and Jamie's going to be. I know he's doing a live Twitch every day of the Irish Open, and so if you want to follow him, you can actually watch him play the game as it goes along. That'll be a lot of fun for a lot of people. But yeah, he's a good one to follow, and he has pretty good results. So he might be a good one to drop a bet or two on.
So I totally agree. He's a great. If you do have a bet on his, now he's matched up against Sam Trickett, which is a matchup I love because obviously Sam Trickett is one of the strongest players in the UK. Plays a bit online, but more live, and I think maybe with the fact that he's giving it up to Jamie Staples, who's got the online experience, the matchup right now is priced very close. We've got Sam Trickett minus 115 and Jamie minus 110. Would you lean one way there, or do you think that's fair?
Well, obviously Sam Trickett, phenomenal poker success story, and he's actually had some good online results lately. So if he takes this serious, he'll be a force to be reckoned with. But he's like Rob. He plays in very high-stakes games. Will he take a 1,000-pound tournament this serious? If he does, he'll be a force. But Jamie, is going to be every single bit, every single play, every single thing is going to be very intense. And this is going to be like his event of the year type thing. So how serious he's going to be. So I think it's a good price, and I think it's very fair, going either way, as you said, because Jamie's online every day playing, and he's very comfortable with it. So it's just a matter of if you want to take Sam or you want to take Jamie.
So if you haven't watched Twitch, I don't know if people have, but essentially these days, that is your live sport. And Jamie will be streaming his cards. I think Cards Up he streams with either a 5 or a 10-minute delay. So if you have a bet for and against them, a bit of fun anyway for those guys, because you'll be able to basically watch every hand. It's kind of like watching World Poker Tour on TV, Mike, the fact that you basically get to see his cards.
Yeah, and you just think automatically that Sam is one of those guys that will accumulate chips, and take some chances where he couldn't go out early, and he'll be rebuying every day. No doubt about it.
Parg, we're having a problem with your audio, I think.
That's not usually a problem.
No.
That happens live.
Well, while we've got you back, Parg. Yeah. I was gonna say. Favorite Irish Open memories. I mean, can I throw out some champions to you?
I wish I could throw out a load of them. How many am I allowed?
Would you say the Irish Open is the event that you most like to win, Parg, outside of the WSOP main event?
Yeah, well, I can remember you interviewing Rory Liffey at one stage, and you asked him, was he going to play the World Series? And he said, sure, he was, that it was great practice for the Irish Open. And I can understand quite a lot of that. And obviously, I mean, he was exaggerating a little bit, but not an awful lot. Like, I mean, for the Irish players, and particularly for the more old school Irish players, I mean, who've been part of the history and watched the whole thing evolve from from a flat or an apartment up in Hanlon's Corner, I mean, into one of the best events in Europe.
Right. It started at the Eccentric Club. It moved to the Marion Club, and then when Paddy Power took it over before Party, there were some big years when they had it on TV.
We were in the Jackpot Club, the City West, the Burlington Hotel, Jury's Hotel, the Russell Court Hotel, and God knows where else. But we played at a lot of places.
My favorite year, the ones that I attended, of course, Marty Smith won, I think, the biggest first prize in Irish Open history. That was a fantastic, that was a final table. He was Roland de Wolf was at that final table. Sorel Mitzi, who was only 18 years old.
Yeah. No, my favorite memory of that Irish Open happened just after it was over. I was in the bar talking to Mike, actually, and the bar was getting noisy, and I hadn't had a drink for 6 months, so I just went to get a little bit of a break. Not from Mike, from the noise in the bar. But I was in the poker room just thinking about this and that, and Marty has pulled his van up outside the back entrance of the poker room, and he said, Porrig, I need some help. I said, what's the problem, Marty? He said, I got to load up two of these poker tables into the van to take home. I said, you can't do that. He said, no. He said, I got permission. I said, well, from who? And he said, from Liam Flood. So I said, no, you didn't. He said, no, Liam likes me. I said, no. I said, Liam doesn't like anybody. So you can forget about that. I do a lot of promotion work for Paddy Power for the Irish Open, mainly on the other side of the Atlantic. So I'm not going to help you to steal two poker tables out of the back of the hotel. And so I thought, I'm out of here. I don't want to be part of this crime. And I've gone walking towards the door, and Eamon Connolly comes walking in. And Mad Marty goes, Eamon, I need some help. Oh God! I just walked out the door and kept going. It was just typical Mad Marty.
This will be the first Irish Open without Mad Marty Wilson. Of course, the passed away earlier this year, and he was one of the spirits of the Irish Open. I think he came over, took his van over every year from England.
Yeah, and well, Marty was fantastic for Irish poker because, well, as you well know, Marty did some stuff on the quiet as well, and he played a huge part in poker for the homeless for here, and used to bring a whole, maybe 20, 25 guys over from Wolverhampton every year. So, I mean, he was very much part and parcel of the Irish poker scene, and a big part of the Irish Open, and he's going to be missed unless you're the guy that's in charge of trying to make sure the tables don't get stolen.
So, speaking of helping out this tournament, obviously because it's online, there's a lot of dealers and tournament staff who usually get a lot of work in Ireland this year that aren't going to be. And I know that they've held back a percentage of the reg fee for the online tournaments. That's going to go to the dealers and to the tournament staff. So fantastic for Party Poker to be doing that in these tight times, Mike, and also the Irish Open.
It is. It's just a great thing that's happening, and I'm just thrilled to see that Party Poker and the Irish Open have paired up, and they're going to bring the Irish Open online. and I really think it's got a chance to be the biggest event of all time.
I agree. Look, we're all sitting at home and just gagging to be able to watch some live sports. We understand, the reasons that they can't happen, but poker is here. Right now there's a Phil Galfond's playing an online challenge on one site, which has attracted massive viewers. They're playing huge. And obviously with the Irish Open and what Party Poker is doing, you're talking three of the biggest events, in poker coming up between the Irish Open, the Poker Masters, WPT. Worth watching for me on Twitch or on Party Poker.
Yeah, we're excited at Party Poker to be bringing all these events to you online, and it's just a fun time. Look, the money spends the same whether you win it online or you win it live. And as I said, you save travel expenses, hotel expenses. Anybody can play from home, and it's just a fantastic opportunity. Obviously, satellites going consistently on Party Poker
from about $1. It's a step series. You can there's $1, there's $11, there's $100, and then to get into the 1,000. So yeah, if you feel like having a go, and obviously the fun thing is, if you sit down, even in one of the satellite events, it's all real names. So you might find yourself up against a Marty Smith, an Owen O'D, or Sam Trickett, or any of the really, really big names. And it's going to, a thrill really to play with them sometimes.
The beautiful thing is the little guy has a shot here. You can enter these small buy-in tournaments and go to the step tournaments, as you said, where you can get an entry in these big tournaments and might win some big money. It's just like the old days at the World Series, Jesse. As you know, almost all of us that entered that main event had to win a satellite to get in it. Nobody really had $10,000 to buy in the main event back in those days, hardly. And the first 5-6 times I ever played the main event, I had to win a satellite to get in.
Right, Tom McAvoy, the first satellite winner to win the main event, that was as far back as '83, I think. So
it was '83, and the guy he beat also won the satellite to get in the tournament. So, but that's the way it was back in the old days. The opportunity to be able to play satellites, and do these step tournaments, you can do those online. In live casino settings, most of the time, they don't have the space, the tables, the dealers to run very small buy-ins where you can parlay where your way up. It's usually a much bigger buy-in to get into the satellite there to win a seat in the tournament. But you have these, you got the Party Poker passports now. They got a WPT passport that you can get on Party Poker. All these things where you can win $5,000 or more to go to these live events. And obviously the Irish Open has many satellites that people can get in to buy in the main event. So it's a great opportunity for players. I think it's going to be an exciting event, and I believe it's going to be very, very large.
So, of course, if you're like me now, I've been around a while, and unfortunately, I've already learned where my peak is in terms of poker skill. So even as back far in the days of the World Series, I just wanted to be on the rail and having a good punt on who I thought the stars were, which is why I love watching poker, but it's always more fun if you can have a bet on it, use your judgment, and try and make a little money along with it. So, hopefully this is the beginning of something. The markets aren't huge right now. I think it's more about the possibilities for the future. But what I'd like to see is every sports book, every betting exchange, everybody picking up these odds to make them competitive. And letting the events be, as you say, have enough size and confidence that you can bet on. Then look, that's with every sport, Mike. You know yourself. If it's a tennis challenger tour, you're not going to want to have the same confidence in that as you would in Wimbledon. So we need the Wimbledons of poker here, and that's what's fun to watch and bet on.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities for betting in poker, and as each day goes by, obviously you're going to get more and more bets because the fields are smaller. But I think you could even do things like, for example, before anybody draws seats for the final table, you can bet on seat 1, seat 2, seat 3, seat 4, seat 5, seat 1 through 9 or 1 through 8, and you get 7-1 on it. Now, you might draw the chip leader, you might draw the guy that's a short stack, but you're going to have action where you're going to get 7-1. And I think that would be hugely popular, and you'd be amazed how many people would bet that way if somebody set it up that way.
All right, I'm copying these down as to pass over to Matchbook. Now, you're going to have to tell me what are some of the craziest prop bets you've made on a poker tournament. I know you used to always bet about the age of the winner, and you used to always bet, will women make the final table, those kind of bets.
I made bets for about 5-6 years. we were at a WPT event once, and I'm sitting around all these young guys, and this was about 2009 or so, something like that. And the online, kids were dominating and starting to come into their own, and they started bad mouthing Phil Hellmuth, and I mean really bad mouthing him, and
he'd only won. I probably only won about 11 bracelets at that time.
Yeah, but the young guys didn't think he could play anymore, So I'm just listening. I haven't said a word. And I said, look, finally I spoke up. I said, I know you guys don't think Phil can play. And he's over the hill. I said, but I'll tell you what I'll do. If you lend me $1.20, lend me 12,000 to 10,000, you can pick as many guys to win a bracelet against Phil Hellmuth as you like. I'll take Phil. You can have anybody against him. Just lend me 12 to 10 on any player you like. And they said, oh, yeah, I want to do it. And they started listing names.
Oh, but I want to do it.
Yeah. And they came up with 10 names. And so I had 10 players that they bet on, and I had Phil Hellmuth, and they were lending me 12 to 10 on all of them. And Phil won the bracelet, and not one of their 10 guys won the bracelet, and I won 120,000 on Phil Hellmuth. But see, my logic was I knew I could only lose 20,000 probably. Only 2 or 3 max of those guys are going to win bracelets. All 10 of them aren't ever going to win. And in case my man won, I could win 100,000. So that was my logic in betting that. Not necessarily thinking Phil was better than these guys, but the truth is it worked out perfect for me. And Phil will always be my idol because of that. That was actually one of my greater prop bets. That was a lot of fun. But
yeah, I mean, there's been some great ones, over the years with the bracelets. I can't remember exactly. I think it might have been 2010 or 2011, but the famous Tom Dwan had bet so much on himself to win a bracelet that when he got to the final 2, I believe he was going to break the entire high-stakes poker world if he actually won the bracelet.
He would have. I was actually in a tournament that was just 15 feet away from that table right there, and 4 guys at my table obviously had bet against Dwan to win, and everybody was sweating. They're all craning their necks, every hand, every pot, and like you said, there had been a lot of damage done had Dwan won that tournament, and the roar that went out when that other guy won was unbelievable. And I'm not one of them that bet against Dwan, but a lot of guys did, and
they sweated it. But in the end, he just missed out. Got second, I think.
He did. He got second.
Yeah. So look,
that was exciting, and but betting in poker is taking place. I can remember in 1994. This was after Terry Rogers had left and been gone, and I went up to Doyle Brunson. I said, Doyle, I got the greatest idea ever. I said, we're going to make either 100,000, 40,000, or 20,000. We can't lose anything. Yeah. He said, what is it this time? And I said, we're going to book the main event. I said, everybody can bet maximum 1,000 per player, and the maximum odds we're going to give, most everybody's going to get 100 to 1 odds. So if we take 100 bets, we can't lose anything. And we're going to have about 150 players going for us where we can win 100,000. Otherwise, we'll break even. And some players, there'll be about 3 or 4 players at 60 to 1, 3 or 4 at 80 to 1, and the rest all will be 100 to 1. And
this is the 25th anniversary. This is the 25th anniversary year. Yeah.
It was the 25th anniversary, and I could see him line up a little bit, And I said, Doyle, you don't have to do anything. I said, I'm going to do all the work. I'll go out and I'll make the bets. I said, all you have to do is say you're standing good for the money, even though you won't have to put up any money because we can't lose. And so he finally agrees to it. So I go around and taking bets, and everybody's excited. And the very first person, the funny part about this story is I was with Chris Bjorn. Now, Chris is a big sports bettor, as you know. And
one of the best in the history of Europe, although he was always under the radar, yeah. Yeah,
and so I said, here, Chris, here's the odds. I'll give you first opportunity to bet here. So he saw that Phil Hellmuth and Johnny Chan and, and TJ Cloutier, they were all 60 to 1. They were the number 1 seeds, and the next round of players, were Barry Johnston and Eric Seidel, and some of these guys were like 80 to 1. So anyway, he's looking at it, and he says, Mike, he said, I got a deal for you. I said, okay, what is it? He says that you must make Phil Hellmuth 120 to 1. He's got to be the highest priced player in the field. He said, if he wins the tournament, I'll give you the extra 60,000. He said the condition is you can't ever tell him that anybody ever, did this. It's not a prank. That you and Doyle just thought he was the worst ranked player in the field. You didn't think he could win. And
he knew. He just knew how much fun that was.
Oh, my God.
And it was worth the money.
He thought that Phil's mind would be completely blown if he was the highest priced player in the field. And but Phil was a good friend of mine, and he was one when I started getting sponsorship, was the only player that said, Mike, I think you're on the right track. And so I always respected him for that. So I just didn't have the heart. I just couldn't do it. And I laughed about it. So anyway,
yeah.
So I started taking the bets, and I get easily 40, 45 players, where players have bet. And then you could bet, as I said, some people bet 100, 200, 300. Some people bet 1,000. The max you could bet on a player was 1,000. So we'd taken in about 50,000 or so, and it's the night before the main event. And now Doyle's playing in a high stakes cash game. And he said, how we doing? I said, well, we're all right, 50,000. And now the guys at the table start needling him. Lyle Berman and these guys. What kind of bookmaker are you? Take $1,000 bet. What kind of deal is that? He says, open the blade up here. Give us a chance to bet something, And then Doyle stuck his chest. Said, okay, fire away, boys. Who you want? You can have anybody you want for a dime. Go ahead, bet. So now these guys start throwing $1,000 chips. He said, you got that. And I'm writing all these bets down. Now he takes in like 22,000 in bets right there at the table from these guys. And naturally, they bet on all the Phil Helmuths and the Johnny Chans and the TJ Cloutiers and all the good players, So now Doyle's got 200,000-300,000 he could lose on all these players, and now he could lose 200,000-300,000. So now, as he's raking in all these chips.
Hold it. You said he couldn't lose, Mike.
Yeah. He couldn't if he'd stuck to my plan, but he aborted it. So now he rakes in all his chips and he starts laughing. He said, boys, all I know is one thing. Only one man can win. As he takes down the money. Now, the next day, the tournament starts. Okay. Now, right before the end of after the second break, before we get to the third break and the final break of the day, they start announcing like the top 10 chip leaders. And naturally, all the guys that they had double and triple bets on, bam, 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 bam. There were like 6 of them out of 10 in the chip lead. And unfortunately for me, I ran into Doyle on that break. God damn it, I can't believe you got me in this trap. He said, I can't believe this. I can't believe what an idiot I am. And he said, we're going to lose a couple 100,000. I just don't believe it. He said, how can you do this? And I said, Doyle, please. I said, if you'd stuck to my plan, you couldn't have lost anything like that. He didn't want to hear it. No, he said, I can't believe what an idiot I am. He said, why did I think these donkeys could ever beat these good players? He said, I'm an idiot. So he goes on and on. So now the tournament goes on. And now every time one of the top players gets knocked out, I'm a sigh of relief. I get a sigh of relief. So now we finally get down to the final table. And there's 6 players. But 4 of them, believe it or not, had bets. But 2 of them only had $200 bets on them. That was Al Crux and Robert Turner only had 200. But 2 had 1,000, Russ Hamilton and Spadavecchia. So
and they had, I don't know, now when had they announced that they were going to pay the winner his weight in silver?
Oh, that was from before the tournament ever started.
Okay.
That was the tournament before it ever started, that the winner was going to get a weight of silver. And when it got down to 3 players, it was Russ Hamilton and Spadavecchia. Another guy did weigh 100 pounds. And so 2 guys weighed 120 pounds or less. And then Russ Hamilton, they got him on the scale. And they put these guys on the scale in 120 pounds and 110 pounds. And then Russ got on the scale, and it was a 300-pound scale, and it clunked right to the ground. And he weighed about 350. They had to go put him on the meat farm, And Jack Benny was sweating bullets. So anyway, back to my story. The night before the final table, we were in a situation where we could lose 28,000 on a couple guys. We'd taken in 72,000 altogether now. And nobody could win the double bets or triple bets, so it wasn't going to be too much damage. So now, one of the $200 guys say, hey, what could I settle for? So now I said, well, let me ask, now if one guy settles, I got to get all 4 to settle. So I went around and I started to make a settlement with everybody to see what we could do. And I discovered that I could settle with all of them for 60,000. So now I go back to Doyle. I said, Doyle, I said, you can gamble here, or if you want, you can lock up a small profit, because I've got everybody to agree that they would settle for 60,000, meaning we could make 12,000. he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Doyle, honestly, it's your money, so I think you need to make this decision." You know, naturally, I would like to gamble because I had a shot to win. I could have won 36,000, but you know, he was the one that could have lost 28,000 or so. And
Oh God!
you know, you couldn't just settle with one or two of them because then they could have lost 50 or 60,000. So
Right.
it had to be an all deal or not. So finally, I said, "Well, maybe we should settle." So I said, "Okay." So I went out and I settled with the guys. I come back and give Doyle the 12,000. He says, "You know," he said, "it's not bad locking up a profit." So now it gives me the 6,000. And obviously, it was a good deal because the next day we would have lost 40,000 because we wouldn't have won the 12. We'd have lost the 28. So I actually saved him 40,000 by making the deal. So now I was in his good graces again. Hey, that was a pretty good idea to offer those guys a settlement. He would have never thought of it. So the whole thing worked out. But that was just another book and story, another day in the life of the gambling at the World Series of Poker that actually worked out well.
So, Mike, that went a little better than the one time that Parg and I tried to book an online poker tournament. I don't. We did exactly
God.
one, didn't we, Parg?
Yeah, with Porrig's money, if I remember correctly.
So you're just like Doyle Brunson, and I played the part
Yeah.
of Mike.
Yeah, exactly.
But not as well. It was yeah.
We did it twice. We did it once online on the Poker Million, and then we did it on the World Series of Poker. And we laid a guy at 300 to 1 in to win the Poker Million.
I think it was no. I think it was a tournament on PokerStar. It was like the W Cooper, you know, whatever they had, the big online tournament at the time, and it was all screen names, and we were doing it on the betting exchange BetDAC, and we used your money. We tried to lay.
Yeah, that was a good idea.
Yeah, we tried to lay about 100 different screen names to lose, I think, about 10 or 12,000, and we only took one bet on the entire exchange, and that was on a guy named Eric123, who was.
You think I was going to forget his name?
It was Eric Sagstrom. I don't know if you remember him, Mike.
I don't know.
A fantastic online player. And we laid him at 125 to 1. That was the only bet we took. He pissed it, to be honest with you. I don't think it was
I'll tell you a funny story. First time I met Eric Sagstrom, 123, he was at Shadow Creek Golf Course. We're on the driving range hitting balls. And he starts talking. Now, he's a poker player. He was a high-stakes poker player. He's out there hitting balls, and he hit them pretty good. I got to tell you, he looked like a decent player. He was teeing off with a 3-wood. And now he starts talking about to everybody else. He said, "What kind of odds can I get to make the U.S. Open in the next 10 years to play in the U.S. Open?" I said, "To play in the U.S. Open?" He said, "Yeah." And he said, "What kind of odds can I get?" I said, "Well, I'll give you 10 to 1. I said, "I'll lay you $1 million to 100,000. I had money back then. And
how about on a budget? Yeah.
You don't need money to lay bets like that.
Yeah. He said, "No." He said, "I'd take 20 to 1, though." I said, "You take 20?" He said, "Well, I got to change my whole lifestyle. I'd have to give up poker. I got to practice every day." And the conditions were going to be that he had to qualify in the U.S. to make the U.S. Open. Now, let me tell you, it is so hard to get in the U.S. Open. Pros that play on the regular tour, 50 of them do that Monday qualifying for like 2 spots or something like that, you know. So if he qualified here and not from some foreign entity or something, you know, I thought, wow, you know, I didn't see there was any shot he could make it. And I was going to bet him. And I didn't decide to do it, but I had such respect for a guy that had that kind of confidence that he was that good and he could do it, you know. And it is a good golfer, but I don't think he would ever made the U.S. Open.
Guys, we're gonna have to. Parg, sorry we lost you in the mid-time for the technical difficulties, but we're gonna have to wrap this up. Hopefully,
I thought
we'll be
you just kicked me off.
No. We want you along. But look, guys, I want to thank both of you for joining us here on the Matchbook Betting Podcast. Mike, I hope you'll be watching along with the Irish Open. I know Parg will. I will certainly be watching. And, of course, there are the betting markets up on Matchbook. There's last longers now. And then as the tournament goes on, we will be putting markets up every day. So have a look and enjoy the tournament, everyone.
Yeah,
thanks, guys.
Highly recommend that everybody takes a little bit of action on it. Get yourself a bet or two. Have some fun watching. and try to qualify, win a seat to play. That's my best advice.
Yeah.